The soft hum of the city wrapped around Jane as she stepped out of the cafe, her mind buzzing with the typical stresses of a Friday afternoon. She glanced at her phone and saw a flood of emails, all awaiting her response. With a heavy sigh, she shoved the device into her bag. It was her only day off, and she wasn't about to let work steal it away. As she strolled down the familiar streets, she thought back to her childhood. The bustling city had once seemed so far away, just a distant dream. She had grown up in a small town, a world of quiet mornings and familiar faces. And in that world had been her best friend, Emma. Jane smiled at the memory of Emma, her wild laughter, her fearless attitude, and the adventures they used to have together. They had been inseparable since they were kids, sharing every secret, every heartache, and every moment of joy. But as life often does, it had pulled them in different directions after college. Emma had moved to Europe for a job, while Jane stayed behind, building her career in New York. It had been years since they last spoke properly, aside from the occasional text or birthday message. Life had a way of creating distance, even between the closest of friends. But as Jane walked through the busy streets, something strange happened. A sense of longing for those old days hit her like a wave. Just as she was about to cross the street, a voice caught her attention. Jane? Jane Johnson. Her heart skipped a beat. That voice, she hadn't heard it in so long, but it was unmistakable. She turned slowly, her eyes widening as they locked with those of the woman standing just a few feet away. It was Emma. For a moment, Jane stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Emma was there, right in front of her, just as she remembered. Her bright red hair was pulled into a messy bun, and her mischievous grin stretched wide across her face. It was as if time had rewound itself, and they were back in their old town, planning their next adventure. Emma? Jane's voice was barely more than a whisper. Is it really you? Emma's laughter filled the air, that same carefree sound Jane had missed for so long. Of course it's me, silly. What are you doing here? I live here now, Jane said, still trying to wrap her head around the fact that her best friend, whom she hadn't seen in years, was standing in the middle of a New York City street. I can't believe this. What about you? I thought you were still in Europe. I was, but I moved back a few months ago. I've been traveling a bit, but New York is my new home, Emma explained, her eyes gleaming with excitement. I can't believe we ran into each other like this. Jane shook her head, grinning from ear to ear. Of all the places and all the days, what are the chances? Exactly, Emma exclaimed. This is fate, I swear. We have to catch up. Are you free right now? Jane hesitated for only a second before nodding. I was just out for a walk, so yeah, I'm free. Let's grab a coffee. The two friends found a cozy cafe a few blocks away, and soon they were seated by the window, steaming mugs of coffee in front of them. As they settled in, it was as though no time had passed at all. The years of silence melted away, and their conversation flowed effortlessly, just like it used to. So, tell me everything, Jane said, leaning forward eagerly. What have you been up to? I feel like we've barely talked since you left for Europe. Emma laughed, shaking her head. Oh, where do I even begin? Europe was amazing, first of all. I got to travel to so many places. Italy, Spain, Greece, everywhere. But work kept me super busy. You know how it is. Jane nodded. I can imagine. You were working with that nonprofit, right? Yeah, I was. It was great, but after a while, I just felt like I needed a change. So I decided to come back to the States. New York seemed like the perfect place to start fresh. Jane smiled. I'm so glad you did. I can't believe we haven't seen each other in so long. Remember when we used to spend every weekend together? It feels like a lifetime ago. I know, Emma said, her eyes lighting up with nostalgia. We were always getting into some kind of trouble. Remember that time we tried to camp in your backyard, but we got scared of the raccoons and ended up sleeping inside? Jane burst out laughing. Yes, and we swore we heard something in the bushes, but it was just the wind. Emma grinned, her laughter contagious. Those were the days. I miss that, you know? Life was so much simpler back then. It really was, Jane agreed, her heart warming at the memory. I've missed you, Emma. I didn't realize how much until now. Same here, Emma said softly. I've missed you too, Jane. We were always like sisters, and I hate that we let life get in the way of that. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, both reflecting on the passage of time and the ways it had changed them. But as they sipped their coffee, the conversation soon shifted from nostalgia to the present. So, what about you? Emma asked, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. How's life in the big city treating you? Jane chuckled. It's a lot. Work